Hey guys, so here we are. After Nikon D810 review, it's finally time to continue full-frame camera testing. Today we will take a closer look at the Canon 5D Mark III, iconic full-frame that has a quite big demand even now. I will try to question its performance and value in comparison with other second-hand rivals and find out is it still valuable alternative in 2019. Before getting into the concretes, I'm very grateful for all of you that subscribe to my channel. This helps me to grow and make more and more videos. If you haven't done it yet, please consider subscribing to my channel. Let's start by mentioning key specs of 5D Mark III. It has 22 megapixel full-frame CMOS sensor, 61-point autofocus system, video recording up to 1080p at 30 frames per second. You can probably tell that my unit is pretty worn out, but don't worry much since it's just a matter of use. I'm sure it was heavily used for professional purpose in the past. Like you would expect from a full-frame DSLR, camera is quite bulky and heavy. Having almost 1 kg plus lens in one hand is not a super comfortable feeling, but that's just how it is with this type of cameras. Body made from magnesium alloy gives impression of quality, solidity and robustness. That said, paint coating is definitely a weak point. It should be much more durable or more integrated into the material, since that sign of worn is not acceptable in this class. There are few posts about that on the web, so I don't think it's only matter of my unit. Like most professional grade DSLRs, Canon has operating style meant towards professional use. In order to switch, for example, white balance or ISO, you just press dedicated button and then use a dial. Information is displayed on a little screen on the top of the camera. After getting familiar with that, you start to notice it's a great thing to have. But I have to say, I liked Nikon way even more, where you just use a combination of button and dial. It was easier and faster to switch multiple things at once. There are also some quirks in terms of handling this camera. For example, having two different sized joysticks to browse through the menu, when it could simply have just one. I also don't like the way of changing aperture by using joystick near LCD panel where it's more difficult to reach. Back in 2012, when 5D Mark III was introduced, it got a lot of approval for its software speed, how fast it was to turn on, turn off, to take a photo and browse settings. I have to admit that I was quite skeptical about all that, but it turns out to be true. Even now, for 2019 standards, user interface is really quick and works like a charm. On the other hand, user experience is not on the highest level. Settings menu in Nikon and Sony are a little bit more simple and intuitive to use from my perspective. Using viewfinder is pure fun. It still has more advantages over EVF for me. I already talked about that in my past videos. Keeping in mind its full-frame camera, vision gets even bigger and so experience is getting better. Quality of 3.2-inch LCD panel on the back is more than enough to preview photos. It has good color reproduction and contrast, but sadly it lacks articulation. Unfortunately, I can't say much about its autofocus, since I was limited to 50mm portrait lens in my testing period, but as far as I can tell, it was pretty accurate and reliable. 61 autofocus points is also plenty enough for me. When it comes to the image quality, I have to point out that I would love to test 5D Mark III or its successor in the future once again, because poor weather and limited lens selection didn't allow me to truly see its photo potential. That said, I took more than 200 photos with different settings, and so I will present you my honest impressions. I have to confess that I always somewhat preferred Nikon, Sony and other manufacturers much more than Canon, because of my experience with few Canon aps-c models, like 1200D, 760D, 70D and etc. They always seem to be worse than competition, producing flat pictures, often with blown out sky highlights. But I think objectivism in this kind of review is much more important than personal preference, so it's always important to be open-minded, especially when looking at different unfamiliar models. In the end, I slightly changed my mind about Canon. Surprisingly, overall dynamic range was actually pretty good. There were moments when camera would blown out sky highlight a little bit, but given weather conditions, I cannot fully speak about that aspect. Photos come out saturated, vivid and very well balanced in terms of color accuracy, both with good and poor lighting condition. Sometimes automatic white balance would make photos have that bluish tint, but that was rare and not so disturbing. Photos have very good amount of detail and they indeed look sharp, as you can see from those examples. By the way, most of the time I shoot at f4 to get most sharpness out of this particular lens. Major problem of this camera for me is that after a close inspection of all of my shots, I came to the conclusion that Canon lacks ability to reproduce depth of textures and objects on the same level found in comparable Nikon, sometimes making them look as they were cut and pasted in post-production, in my opinion. Previously tested Nikon D810 made me blown away by its quality because photos were not only sharp like in Canon, but they contained a lot of nuances, details and distinct definition. I would call this more preserved, three-dimensional look, especially visible in magnification. Of course, D810 has more megapixels than Canon 5D Mark III, but I think there are more things accounting into the difference than that, to be honest. I know some people prefer that more flat Canon look, and there is nothing wrong with that. I have to say I much appreciate how some photos came out, especially from combination with that Canon 50mm f1.4 lens. Beautiful bokeh, very fresh, kind of artistic look, and like I said earlier, nice color tones. Performance across the ISO range in low light is also great. Once again we have a lot of advantages of a full frame sensor. There is hardly any noise up to ISO 800. Above that, results are also very good, like you would expect from camera in this class. Out of the box, Full HD videos from Canon are of very unsatisfying quality for me. There are not many details and sharpness is far from 2019 standards. They are looking very dated, although I have to admit that low light performance on higher ISOs seems to be pretty excellent. On the other hand, that plus shallow depth of field might give you some worthy results, but I'm far from recommending this camera for video recording purpose to anyone. I heard there are some custom firmwares that improve its quality, but it's not official and I have no experience with that. In summary, camera is designed for professionals and so build quality, functionality is mostly good. Image quality hasn't really dated much, it's still great tool for professionals and amateur photographers. Beauty of full frame is definitely noticeable when taking photos. Canon 5D Mark III is absolutely worth the money for people that are heavily into the Canon system. I have to admit that I was positively surprised by its performance, but as much as I changed my mind about this flagship product from Canon, I honestly cannot advise you buying this camera over Nikon D810 or Sony A7 for example. I think mentioned rivals offer better photo, video quality and more. Because of 5D's popularity, be aware that many units have been very much exploited and so their future life expectation might be limited. In the end, it all depends what you prefer. Tell me what do you think about 5D Mark III and its value in 2019 in the comments section below. Subscribe and rate this video to support my work. Thank you very much for watching and see you later.